Hello. Welcome to the Jack and Jack show. You may be wondering where Joe Sansom is. He is tied up at work this week, and obviously because of the Sunderland game, we usually film on a Wednesday. Because of the Sunderland game, we thought we would look back on it on the Thursday. So it's a quick turnaround to Saturday. So hopefully you enjoy the show. Jack Stroudley, of course, alongside me. The I don't even know what to call you now. They're just the rolling sub.
I'm always ready. I'm always ready off the bench, ready to be subbed in wherever necessary. But it's always good to be here. Always good to talk to you. And yeah, decent result yesterday, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because I don't, I usually go to a lot of games, a lot of Fulham games. I think this is the fourth I've missed in about 6 years. So it was a weird just not to be there. But I didn't feel as though a trip to Sunderland. We both felt a trip to Sunderland wasn't justified at all. But fair play to the 599 who went up there last night. It looks you did make a good noise from what I heard on the television. And Jack, we're through to round 5 of the FA Cup, beating Sunderland. And you know what? People are making more a song and dance about the fact that we almost drew the game. They scored in the last minute, whatever. I thought it was fairly comfortable throughout. Really, I wasn't really worried watching the game. Maybe it's because I had a few cans and I was being a little bit jolly. But maybe from a sober point of view, you might have thought differently.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I was never really stressed, to be
No.
honest with you. Even when they got one back through, I think it was Jack Clark who scored. Even then, I was kind of just a bit like, "Oh, this is a little bit worrying." But they didn't really. It was a very different game to the one at Craven Cottage. I think it was a very entertaining game, is what I will say, and I think both games really epitomise what without trying to sound too cliche, what the FA Cup really is actually about. It was
Magic.
They were both. I'm not going to use the word magic, but they were both very entertaining games. And as a neutral, I think you would maybe not so much last night, but the game at the Cottage. But yeah, as a whole, I wasn't too worried throughout the game, and I thought we were very comfortable. I think that probably helped the fact we scored really early on through Harry Wilson. If the longer the game goes on, and obviously we were 1-0 up, but as the first half kind of progressed, Sunderland grew into the game more and more, without really creating many from memory.
Yeah.
I think Sunderland had a lot of the ball, but Mount Rodak, from memory, had a relatively quiet game.
Yeah, there wasn't too much going on. And if we harp all the way back to when the team news came out, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, we've gone too weak. This is really surprising." Well, no, it's not, because we're playing on Saturday in a league game, and Marco Silva's always reiterated that the priority, even though it looks like it's certainty now that Fulham stay in the Premier League, but he's not gonna be complacent to the fact that we're now playing a Forest team who are 5 unbeaten in the Premier League. He's going to obviously use the squad to his maximum capability. And he was still playing the likes of Paulinho, still played the likes of Harry Wilson, still played the likes of Manos Solomon. And the 9 changes, I was kind of like, that's fine. That's fine. I think there was some surprise that was no Andres Pereira. People maybe were expecting a Harrison Reed in there. I thought TC was brilliant. And obviously Luke Harris playing in the 10 was a big surprise. And then even taking him off after 45, like, I don't want to sound like I'm going against the fans here, but I don't understand why everyone's just making a big old song and dance about resting. Because at the end of the day, like, it's a very logical way of managing your squad, given there's a Premier League game coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I think me and you had a slight disagreement on this. I was firmly in the camp pre-game of, we've made a lot of changes. When you look on paper, it was a weaker side to the one that played at the Cottage.
Yeah, that's true.
11 days prior. So I was a little bit concerned by that. Obviously, in hindsight, it didn't particularly matter. The squad that still played had more than enough quality to beat Sunderland. Obviously, did beat Sunderland. I think the big one for me that was the shock was the fact that I thought that Marco was going to start Alexander Mitrovic purely because he's not scored in a while. He obviously missed that penalty against Newcastle. So maybe a
He
goal.
scored it.
Yeah, you know what I mean. You get what I mean. But yeah, he's a player who he's a confidence player, and he was a player who probably would have needed a goal. But to be fair play to Vinicius. The opening 45, he was good. Got the assist for Wilson. brought others into the game. And, other players, Shane Duffy got an appearance, and I actually thought Shane Duffy was absolutely fantastic last night.
Well, yeah, did the clearance off the line, of course, as well.
Yeah, I thought he was brilliant, to be brutally honest with you. And Kazawa, I can't make my mind up on Live and Kazawa. I'm sure we'll get into the goals, but in against Newcastle, I wasn't overly convinced, but he is so up for the cup.
That's his thing though. It's so funny. We were talking about Live Kazawa last night while watching the game, and he's the only defender to ever, I think, score a Champions League hat-trick. It came against Anderlecht.
Yeah,
we looked it up.
It's such a bizarre one because his defensive. I look at him defensively and I'm not convinced at all. But it's so frustrating because Anthony Robinson has improved so much defensively this season, but in the final third he's lacking. And it's like if you could put Kazawa's like final third with Anthony Robinson, you'd have such a good.
We'd have Roberto Carlos. Honestly.
Yeah, like honestly, but like it is. But look, we got the job done in the end, and I think ultimately that is the most important thing. This could have easily been a slip up for Fulham, and we now find ourselves in a very exciting position. I remember speaking to you prior to the Sunderland game at the Cottage. We get through Sunderland, which we have now. We're now only 2 games away from Wembley, and the draw. I'm not going to say has been favourable to us because it's still a Premier League side at home, and Leeds will probably have a new manager bounce at that point, and I'm sure closer to the time you and Joe will preview Leeds. But you can't really ask for a lot more than a winnable tie, and I think you can absolutely make the argument that this Leeds game is a winnable tie.
Well, you can make the case that Leeds will be prioritising their Premier League status as opposed to an FA Cup run, as much as they'll bring down probably the whole putt in the end and they'll want to put on a good performance. Realistically, if you ask any Leeds fan, would you rather get to a quarter-final of an FA Cup by beating Fulham away in the last minute or staying up in the Premier League? You're obviously going to say staying up in the Premier League. So I think in terms of that sort of context, I feel like the game is quite favourable for us. Of course, we played them in the Carabao Cup last season, lost on penalties. It will go to extra time penalties if it's a draw at the Cottage. There won't be any replay beyond or from round 5 and beyond. But yeah, just hopping back to last night, actually, just quickly, the fact of the matter is, I had no issues with the team because, like we even saw at half time, we can bring on the likes of Pereira and Mitrovic if things are going badly, of which they weren't. We were winning the game, but we still brought them on, and it was refreshing to see. And that even means that we made the 9 changes. Diop and Ream got a complete rest. They'll be starting on Saturday, surely. Cedric might come in because Tete played, but you never know. Tete might. Obviously, Robinson will play. Leno will play. I'm guessing Paulinho. Let's actually just quickly get on to the injuries that were picked up by Kearney and Reed. I didn't actually see the Reed one, but the Kearney one right at the end of the game. But it does pose the question now, are we going to see a debut for Sasha Lukic?
I think now is a good time to introduce Lukic. He's now been, obviously, in England now for about a week or so. And I think Harrison Reed has been very, very good this season. But there has been the argument amongst fans that his performances have started to plateau slightly, which I think is fair enough. And, Reed, he's played a lot of games this season. And, now we've got the depth necessary. I think that now is the perfect time, especially when you consider, Reed did pick up a knock. We don't know how long if he's going to be out for a decent amount of time. I think now is the perfect time to bring in Sasha Lukic and see what he can bring to the table alongside Paulinho.
I'm excited to see him in that role, just see what sort of performance he gives, what sort of player he is on the pitch. I don't know. I've never seen him play apart from compilations on YouTube, but I'm thinking of Sasha Lukic as a sort of Stefan Johansson type player, box to box, energetic, maybe not as shithousery as we saw as Steph Joe, but I'm looking forward to seeing him. And obviously, it's not nice to see the decrease in the performance of Harrison Reed in terms of his quality, but I still think he's a key member of the squad and should still be around the rest of the season and obviously next season as well. I don't think it's someone we should be looking to sell or anything like that. And obviously with Tom Kearney, hopefully the injury is not too bad either. He's still an option off the bench. So we're in great nick. We're in great nick. Let's just get on to Forest then. What's your team? What are you expecting from Forest? And a score prediction.
So in regards to Forest, obviously that they've improved massively under Steve Cooper. The side that they are now is completely different to the side that we beat back in September. But you look at, I was looking just at their games and how they've played, and well, obviously they beat Leeds last weekend. But if you look at like the game as a whole, they were actually relatively poor against Leeds. And Keylor Navas, probably to Nanny, made lots of really, really important saves, and I think he's going to be key. I think they will stay up. I think they'll be fine, but he's going to be key to that. And they now Brennan Johnson appears to have found a bit of form. They've brought in Chris Wood, who I think he's just there as just a big number 9 who can bring others into the game, like Gibbs White. They've got Jesse Lingard, who we always, he's not had a great season, but we know the quality that he's got. Yeah. There's just so many footballers at Nottingham Forest that they've signed. We can literally just make a video just talking about every player they've signed. It's ridiculous. But look, I think it's going to be a tricky game. I'm not expecting it to be a walkover. But if we want to keep on singing, we're going on a European tour, even if it is tongue in cheek, it's a game that Fulham should be looking to win.
Yeah.
And I think I'll go into my team. I think Leno in net. I think the back four is pretty obvious. I think Tete will play. He obviously came off.
He did, yeah, for Bobby Reed.
Then I think it will be Diop, Ream, Robinson,
nice,
Polinia, Lukic, Pereira.
Nice.
The one question mark is Solomon or Deco David Reed on the wing. That's probably the one position that's up for grabs. And I think you can make a decent claim for both. Obviously we've not mentioned Chelsea, but the people thought the change was going to be at Chelsea. But Bobby Reed played very well in that first half against Chelsea. Plateaued a little bit in the second, but he played particularly well. I'll go Solomon just because I think his pace is something that we can do. Forest like to play quite a high line, so having someone who's quick and can really break a defence, I think is going to be beneficial. With Willian on the other side, and then obviously Mitrovic up top. And then in terms of a score prediction, I will go 2-1 to Fulham.
Nice. Yeah, I agree with your team. I just think that because Solomon started last night, I think he will stick with Bobby Reed. And obviously, we've got 5 stars. We can change it around if need be. I just think that might be the way he goes. And obviously, we probably then look to venture down our left with Willian, obviously on the left with Robinson linking up, because I don't think, I always talk about Bobby Reed, like he's not blessed with blistering pace. Like he's not going to outpace someone, outrun someone down that right-hand side. But what he does do very well is he makes himself available in space and gets in the box and scores goals. Yeah. So I'm happy for Bobby to be on the pitch. I think, again, I'd never want to down a Fulham player ever. I think he's been one of our best players this season. I think he's been one of the top. It's good to say, because we've had so many good players over the last few years, but top 10 performers for Fulham.
Yeah, he's been very consistent, very under the radar, and he's so versatile. You could put him anywhere on the pitch near enough, and you'd back him to do a very solid job. So, I suppose it does make sense with the fact that Manuel's just come back from injury and he played a full 90. It was a full 90.
He played full 90? I can't even remember.
I can't remember. But either way, he played a good chunk of the game last night. So, now you say it does make sense. But I think that's probably the one position where there's a big
question mark. Yeah. I'll just double check on that. With Manuel Solomon, because I can't actually remember if he played 90. Let's get on to actually, sorry, I was going to give my score prediction. I was going to say 1-1. I think they'll score. I think we'll score, and that'll be that. He did come off for Dan James in the 80th minute.
Of course,
there's a case that Dan James could start the game. I mean, he hasn't had a ton of minutes, but I think Willian, Bobby Reed, or Solomon, those are the options right now. Even Harry Wilson with the goal last night, he could obviously. I reckon he'll feature at some point, maybe in the game, but maybe not from the start. Good to see Wilson score as well. Yeah. I feel like we haven't talked about the goals specifically from last night, but I mean, you can just watch them on BBC. We don't have to literally talk through them. They're free to air on BBC anyway. So I just wanted to talk about the Premier League relegation battle because last week we saw a game in Nottingham Forest versus Leeds, which we've obviously talked about you referenced just now. And it's one of those games where, 2 seasons ago, we would have been watching with nervous behind the sofa, thinking, "Oh God, any sort of outcome here is going to affect Fulham." And obviously, it just isn't, and it's really really refreshing. You'll laugh at this, I think. Last night it got to about 11, and I was like, "It's probably time to pack it in for the night, go to bed." I ended up not doing that, and I watched an hour fans forum of Southampton board with the Southampton fans. It was absolutely fascinating. Honestly, obviously, Southampton bottom of the table right now. Nathan Jones has not been in the job very long whatsoever. They're in absolute turmoil.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at their fixtures from the beginning of the season, Southampton have only won 4 league games all season. And they've lost so many games.
Yeah, I'm looking. I've got the table up now. I'm having a look. The Southampton situation is just immense. Nathan Jones,
but the thing is, like, sorry to come like butt in, but the whole forum was just really funny because it was like, okay, so we're gonna split up into like 4 parts. We're gonna talk about the manager, then we're gonna talk about the transfers, we're gonna talk about the bigger pitch, then we're gonna talk about like off the pitch stuff. But every question was so passive aggressive. It was actually quite well mannered in terms of how it was how everyone was like treating each other. But it was so passive aggressive because there was like at times the questions were like, "Oh, why is Nathan Jones still employed like at the club?" And then like it would be like Nathan Jones, like, and another guy was just like, "Nathan Jones should be sacked. When are you going to sack him? He's not good enough to be." Like, it was extraordinary, and they just had to front those questions, and they're obviously aware of the situation they're in, and obviously it doesn't help the post match. I don't know if you've seen the post match interview. Oh no, you sent it into the group chat, didn't you?
Yeah.
The post match interview he did after the Brentford game. Oh, it's extraordinary. But anyway, let's talk about the whole relegation. I obviously wanted to reference Southampton because of the thing I watched last night. But what do you make of it? It's a great battle down there.
Southampton. I'll just say a bit on Southampton.
Yeah.
Nathan Jones is going through the biggest head loss I think I've seen in the Premier League. So, he's completely ruined any chance he's got of a Premier League job. It's just mental. I can't see him last in the season. I really can't. And
No.
you can even make the argument now that like Luton are now. I mean, we don't talk, but Luton are now better off, arguably, without him. They look
Well,
really.
Rob Edwards has just basically picked up the baton and
they,
gone with it, really.
Yeah, they look really good. The Southampton. I mean, Southampton. If James Ward-Prowse didn't play for Southampton, they'd already be relegated. To be honest with you, like they just don't have any goals. They just don't. They're so. They're absolutely a banker for me. They're gonna go. Bournemouth. The new manager of Gary O'Neill was absolutely falling off. You know
when you're in a trampoline with someone and like you bounce at the same time, and one of them gets a really big bounce, and you get this like the terrible bounce. They're on that terrible bounce right now.
I'm currently just having a look through their form. Since I guess we've had a World Cup, but they've won 1 game since from November onwards. They've won 1 game, and that was against Everton, and that's when everyone was beating Everton.
They won 3-0, didn't they? Yeah.
They won 3-0, and I'm just looking like from then, they lost 2-0, 2-0, 3-0, 2-0, 1-0. They've scored 1 goal in God knows how long. Like I think they're a definite. I think those 2 are the 2 that I think the vast majority of people will agree on. But it's this 3rd spot which is absolutely up for grabs.
Yeah.
Because Everton were a shoo-in for everyone, but Sean Dyche, the long-term future of Everton, God knows what's going to happen, but you can rely on Sean Dyche for the next 4 months, 2 bags of 4, blah, blah, blah.
You saw against Arsenal, yeah. Those sort of performances.
Just get enough to get them out of trouble. What happens in the summer and who they recruit and that's a completely different story. But you could absolutely bank on Sean Dyche probably doing enough, because I actually don't think this Everton team on paper is that horrific.
No, it's not.
I don't think it's that bad. And then you look at other teams that are in there, and I can't believe I'm saying this in February, but West Ham are literally a point off the relegation zone.
Not only that, but West Ham still they've still got the Conference League, which obviously are they going to sack that off to focus on staying up, or are they actually going to give it a go because they feel like they could maybe win the whole thing. It's
Yeah.
extraordinary, isn't it?
The whole situation is one. I think that shows the poor job that David Moyes is currently doing, because that squad is absolutely stacked with quality players. Leeds were, for me, I was like, they're definitely going to, after Dyche, I was like, right, Leeds might be the one, but now they've sat Jesse Marsh, and who they're going to
Got a point
get
last night.
They did get, yeah, it was a good result against Manchester United. And I really like that. I can't pronounce his name. The guy who scored within a minute.
Willy Gnonto.
That's how you pronounce it. I think he's a fantastic footballer. I think he's really good. They were looking at the guard. Is it Vallecano? It was a Spanish.
Well, basically, what's happened at Leeds is they've had two managerial options. The guy called Ario, I think it's like Ariola or Ariola, basically, we'll call him that. And obviously Carlos Corberan. Carlos Corberan signed a contract at West Brom after being there for, I think, less than like 4 months.
Yeah.
Ariola's move has been blocked by Rayo Vallecano because they feel like they're in a good position to finish in the European places in La Liga. So suddenly Leeds have gone from sacking Marsh and thinking that they've got a replacement in time for their next game, which is against Manchester United at home at Ellen Road on Sky Sports at 2 p.m. And they just don't have anyone at this current moment in time. And they might suddenly, the more it goes on, they might be thinking, oh, let's just get Bielsa into the end of the season. Like, it's ridiculous.
I could talk about this final relegation place for literally hours, because you could make an argument that every team is going to be fine, which obviously isn't the case. But every team, I can't see any of these clubs going down, but one of them has to. Like Leeds, I'm not even talking about Wolves. They've got Lopetegui, who's come in and done a really good job, but they're only, as it stands, only 2 points clear of it. Leicester are only 3 points clear of it, and they've got some fantastic footballers. Yuri Tielemans and James Maddison are absolutely incredible footballers. And then we say, and then you go a little bit further up. There's then Forest and Palace, who I think will both be fine, but it's worth mentioning that they're 6 points clear. So
6 points is 2 games. It can change so quickly. It's not like we're on game 30. I mean, there's still so long to go. And also, Palace have got Brighton at home at Selhurst Park on Saturday. That's not an easy game.
No.
Forest go to us, of course. And if we win that and suddenly Wolves play Southampton, that's a huge game. I feel like if Southampton lose that, Nathan Jones will go, just based on what I watched last night and the attitude of the board and how the fans are feeling. I would recommend watching that, by the way. Go on Southampton's YouTube. I mean, if you have a spare hour. It's worth a watch. It's like uncomfortable, but also like quite intriguing. But Jack, we've spoken for the last 5-7 minutes about relegation, and the word Fulham just hasn't come up.
Yeah, it's great.
It's just amazing, isn't it?
Fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm just looking again, because we're talking about this relegation. I'm currently just looking through teams. Yeah, I didn't quite realise how poor Crystal Palace have been since the World Cup restart.
Well, I mean, Crystal Palace, if you look at the points they got against Manchester United and Newcastle, Elise free kick and the 0-0 draw, that's 2 massively crucial points because their run of fixtures is horrendous.
Yeah, I will say, the run of fixtures haven't been, and obviously they beat Bournemouth as well. The run of fixtures haven't been great to them. So you'd imagine that they will probably start to pull away now that they're at the end of that little rut of games. But it is a mental season. The fact that you look at the fact that we've done so well when quote unquote one of these big clubs is going to get relegated.
Yeah,
which is just insane.
And actually, Leicester's win at Villa last week, I didn't even realize how big that was, because they were behind for twice in that game. And if they'd have lost that, they'd be right in it in the relegation mire, as people call it. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't just touch on what's been going on this week at Manchester City.
Yeah.
And the Super. I feel like, because, we won last night, we're through the cup, we know we're playing Forest a week and we've done that already. Let's just talk about some other footballing stuff. I mean, it's good fun. Manchester City, you all know what's happened, like the breaches, the 100 breaches of FFP and the allegations and the charges that are being put towards them at the moment. It's unthinkable. It feels almost like what happened with the Super League when obviously, that all came out. But obviously this is, you hear the sensationalized titles, the relegations, the stripping of the trophies and the titles. And realistically, this isn't going to be, all done and dusted by next week. We're going to know what's going to be happening with the future of Manchester City. It's more of a case of it's on the horizon, and I feel like Pep Guardiola and Manchester City as a football club can't sit still until they find out whatever happens, whatever comes from the court cases, if it goes to court, which I'm sure it will now. Interesting. It's obviously doesn't really affect us, but it's quite a scary prospect if you are not careful with what you're doing with your finances.
Yeah, the City situation is absolutely fascinating to me, and it looks like it's just a culmination of so many things that they've, if proven guilty, that they've just tried to get away. Yeah, big if that they've tried to get away with, and I don't think it's helped by, as you've said, there's a lot of glamorized articles about relegation and scrapping of the titles and this, that, and the other, and people are claiming if they did get relegated, the EFL don't have to take them, so they could drop.
Well, they wouldn't take them.
They wouldn't take them, so they'd drop even further. And also as well, whatever happens, they can't. What's the word I'm looking for? Appeal against it. I've seen a few things stating that as well. But look, as you said, this is going to be something that rattles on now for quite a while, and I wouldn't. I've been speaking to people and they're going, oh, City this, City that. They're who knows what could happen. They could drop this, that, and the other. I don't think this is going to be settled this season.
Of course not. No.
I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion on this Manchester City thing till at least next season. And then even then, what happens? You look at it, historically. Teams that have shown wrongdoing. Juventus have been dropped divisions. Rangers have been dropped divisions. I know they're all very different things. A big club Chelsea were put under a transfer embargo a few years ago for breaking financial fair play as well. So all of these things that are being thrown out, it all could happen. But I think it's just a case of we're just going to have to just sit it out and wait and see. And I think the whole situation, it must be quite concerning for Pep. The future of the football club that he's effectively tried to build up could all just come crashing and burning without him really being aware of anything.
And also, as a case of, even if it does rumble on for the next, let's say, 18 months to 2 years, that's gonna, if people keep talking about it and they, it's not going to get brushed under the carpet, it will affect incomings in terms of transfers in the summer. If they're linked to the likes of, I know Jude Bellingham is obviously a player that is sought after by Real Madrid, Liverpool, and of course Manchester City. Suddenly, this whole situation is just gonna turn players off from actually signing for Manchester City, and actually, players like Bernardo Silva, who have basically hinted that they want to leave Manchester City already before this even came out. They're going to be pushed even closer to the door, and someone like Erling Haaland, who's obviously come in for actually what was a quite reasonable fee, and obviously got a massive release clause. He might be looking elsewhere as well. Anyway, it's going to be fascinating to see. Obviously, you don't wish this upon anyone, and people are doing a lot of pointing the finger, going, well, City getting their comeuppance, blah blah blah, and because they've done all this spending. But but then again, if this was happening to Chelsea, then I'd be chuckling away. So I can't really say anything. So, and then obviously the Super League stuff coming out again today. I haven't really, I saw it and I was kind of like, I'm not even going to read into this. It doesn't interest me at all. But I was reading like 60 to 80 teams.
Yeah,
and you said something to the group chat just before we recorded. So, what were you saying?
Yeah, I've had a little bit of a look at it. I'm kind of taking it with a bit of pinch of salt because it's early days. Yeah, so the claim is it's going to be 60 to 80 teams. You'd play, I think, 14 games a season. There'd be like a top division and a second division, basically. And I think that the big difference is there's no guaranteed teams. You would gain your position there on they've described it as sporting merit, so whatever that means. And
so this would be in addition to the domestic league as well.
Yeah, this is on top of the domestic league. So it effectively looks like what they're trying to do is, again, I'm just kind of putting two and two together, or I could be completely way off. It looks like what they're trying to do is find a different alternative to the Champions League where they can make a lot more money from it, is what it looks like. But the thing that's like confusing me in regards to it, and again, it's very early days whether anything actually comes from this or not. The idea of it being on sporting merit. Now, for me, the only fair way of doing it on sporting merit would be based on league positioning.
Mm.
And if that's the case, what's the point? Because you've already got, first to fourth in England, first to fourth Champions League, fifth and sixth Europa League, seventh Conference League. And I would assume that what this Super League would do if it came in would wipe out the Europa League and would wipe out the Conference League. That's just me assuming.
So it would just be one big tournament.
Effective. Well, there's going to be 80 teams in it.
You can't put, but then you said splitting into two divisions. You can't put 40 teams in one division.
Yeah, that's because everyone plays 14 games, and when you even think about it, what they're suggesting isn't actually too dissimilar to what the Champions League is going to become with their new format, which is the new Champions League format. I don't know if you like how much you've looked
yeah.
It's absolutely just stupid. Like there's like 36, 38 teams in a big league, and then the top 8 qualify for the round of 16, and then 9th to 16th play in the round of 32, and then
Stop changing football.
Yeah, it's so stupid, basically, and I believe that's going to be the same for the Europa League and the Conference League as well.
One thing we'll mention just before we leave, because we've been hammering on for quite a while, but I don't think anyone's going to mind because obviously this is football chat and it's good to talk football. But the Ivan Toney situation is it hasn't been brought up very recently. He's still playing games, but it's on the horizon. There is that cloud over Brentford at the moment, and of how many charges there have been. I know we've talked about it before, but like you would imagine there's going to be a substantial ban. Whether it comes, it will probably come in at the beginning of next season if the FA get their act together and move fast on it. Brentford have already brought in a backup striker. I think they brought him on loan to the end of the season. Actually, so
they have. Yeah,
it was just in case. But obviously they'll have to revisit that in the summer, depending on what happens. I'm sure he'll play on that Monday night when we play in March. I just think I don't know why these sort of things take so long. There's just so many instances in football where something's very, very sensationalized, like this whole City thing, and then it just dies down and then basically just gets brushed under the carpet.
Yeah.
But because of the nature of what's happened with Manchester City and how serious it is, I don't think it's going to be going away and no one's going to be forgetting about it, really. I feel like every Manchester City game here, like going forward, is going to be referenced with this ongoing issue, Jack.
Yeah, I think as well with the Ivan Toney situation, a lot of like media outlets have to be careful with what they publish because you can't claim that it's all in truth and this, that, and the other. But you're right. The Ivan Toney thing has been going on for a while now, and the amount of cases that are coming out from it, you would imagine it's gonna result in a pretty lengthy ban. Which if that's the case, what can you do? It's fair enough. From a greedy point of view, it's quite frustrating. It's not this season with Brentford currently being 1 point above us. We could do without them having Ivan Toney, to be perfectly honest with you. But that seems to be inevitable. But yeah, you're right in what you say. A lot of clubs and a lot of cases are now coming out, and it's very glorified in the media, and then just the noise just drops just very, very quickly.
You can make a case for a lot of things that have happened this season. I'm not going to go into them. Obviously, you can make your own minds up of what they are and stuff. But it's been a bit of a bizarre season with just so many different, there's been the football, but there's been so many little things outside of the football which has affected the football. Do you know what I mean? So which all has something to do with football. Just I sound like
it's not David Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell the Webb. Look. Just final question. I know we've talked a lot about the other teams in the Premier League. Let's just talk about Fulham finally, because that's the team we support. Are you happy with us finishing 10th behind Brighton and behind Brentford and just yeah?
Yeah, it'd obviously be very annoying if Brentford finished above us, and
But would it?
Well, in the moment, yes, but then you put into context of the fact that this season we'd have all taken 17th, and I still would take 17th. I'd be frustrated with the drop off, but I would still take 17th at this stage.
Yeah.
So we can't really ask much more. Marco Silva's done an absolutely sensational job. The recruitment that we've done is smart. And we've really put ourselves in a good. And we're what, eighth? It's February. We're eighth in the league, and we're in the 5th round of the FA Cup. This is what a season we're having. Like, it's fantastic, and we've really put the building blocks and the foundation in place that we can go from there to there with good recruitment in the summer. And who knows what could happen. I think the biggest thing in the summer is just going to be ensuring that we can keep as much of the squad together as possible, and then adding 1 or 2 real good quality players where necessary.
Yeah, you just have to deep it how successful this season has been, and I feel like I say it every week. We've lost 8 games this season, one of which was to only 1 game to a team who are either the traditional top 6 or right now occupying a place in the top 6, and that was West Ham. And even then, it was bollocks, that game, absolute bollocks. But hey, look, it's just been so good, and it's so frustrating because I spent 2 hours watching the overlap live debate, and Fulham got 3 minutes.
Yeah, if praise. I had it on today. I was in the gym on the treadmill, and I had it on, and I was like, right, let me skip to the Fulham bit, and it was literally Josh Denzel was going, Brighton and Brentford have, over the last few years, they've been so sustainable, which they have, to be fair. They've been sustainable, blah, blah, blah. Here's Sammy James. Tell me about Fulham. And he said, Kenny Tete was brilliant on Friday night, and we looked really good, blah, 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 blah. And then it just went, right, Liverpool. And I was like,
oh, yeah, they interrupted it by talking about someone like Zinchenko.
They were talking about Zinchenko, yeah.
The problem is, it irritates me. We're going on for a while here. This is going to be the last point.
This is a ramble.
It annoys me because, you can make the case for Brentford and Brighton, who obviously established Premier League teams, but you have to put the context. We are the newly promoted team, right?
Yeah.
I know Brentford were last season. They built on that well, because that is what happens when you have a successful Premier League season. You can build on it and get better, and hopefully we're in that position this time next year. But we are the newly promoted team. We're the ones who were easily backed as relegation favourites back in August when we had 2 fit centre-backs before Liverpool. And yet we occupy 8th with Tim Ream playing basically every minute of the season, us doing shrewd business, buying a player in Paulinho who was 20... How much was he? 20... Was he 20 million?
About 20 million, yeah. It was about 20 million.
20 million, who's arguably a better player than Enzo Fernandez, who was signed for 107 million. I know that's obviously, you've seen him play 1 game, you saw him in the World Cup, whatever. We'll make your own mind up at the end of the season. And people are just sort of just going, yeah, they're doing well. Marcus Silva's getting the best out of his team, and that's really it. I don't feel fully satisfied. But then again, why am I obsessing?
You do sound quite rattled, I will say.
I'm not rattled. I'm just curious as to how I don't know. It's you know what?
No, I completely agree with you that the narrative is going to be about Brentford.
You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, the narrative is going to be about Brentford and Brighton purely because they of the money ball and how they recruit players and do this and do that. But we've had I'm not now over the course of how many seasons we've shown that we're not particularly smart of our business. But this summer the summer we've had and the 2 winners we've had have been very, very smart and very, very shrewd. And you're right, it's not really getting the mention. Nobody is talking about one player, for example. Nobody's talking about Andreas Pereira, who was absolutely exiled at Manchester United and was deep. I'll be honest, I was one of them. I didn't think he'd be good enough, and he's been absolutely incredible this season as the Carvalho replacement, effectively, and he's been absolutely incredible.
And obviously, we do have the Friday night game at Wolves, which does mean they will talk about us more, Jamie and Gary Neville, because they usually are there on the Friday night. We do have the Monday night with Brentford, which I'm sure they'll talk about both of us because there's a bit of a love in. Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and also we got the game on Sky on against Arsenal, which of course is top of the table. Arsenal, the narrative might be slightly different, but we're there to at least disrupt the noise and actually get people noticing us. Jack, we've been rattling on for 40 minutes, which is so unlike the Jack and Joe show of recent videos. But it's just nice to talk a bit of football and actually take a bit of stock, realize where we are, and appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I do agree. We have rambled on for quite a while, and I'd be impressed if how many people have stayed for the duration of just pure waffle that we have gone through. But Yeah, it's nice just to sit back and effectively put your feet up. Fulham are in a fantastic position. We're into the next round of the cup. Let's enjoy it.
Viva El Fulham, yeah. I mean, it really is. It really is a good time to be a Fulham fan. If you've got a spare hour and 40, watch the Southampton fan debate with the board, and then watch this. But yeah, honestly, thanks everyone for watching. Jack, thanks so much for being here.
No worries. Cheers for having me. And yeah, fingers crossed. You and Joe are talking about 3 points next week.
Yeah, I think we're back on like Wednesday to preview the Brighton game and talk about the Forest game. Thanks for sticking with us. Sorry we're taking up so much of your time, but hopefully you've enjoyed just like a relaxing chat about the Premier League and other teams' issues. Would you believe it? But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and come on, Fulham.